it wasn't a question of like if I would take it on. It was like, when I would take it on. 3 years ago, I was like chasing someone around parkrun who, now I would sort of like, run in like just everything. It's just like literally everything to like our family.
My first question to you, welcome, Cal, tonight to our chat around the fire, live from London and Yorkshire with Andy. What do you think was the contributing factor or factors to what I think was your breakthrough performance, sort of on Friday night at the Podium 5K in Battersea in London?
I just think so. Like you sort of track my results over the last year. It's been obviously going up at a sort of steady trajectory. There's not been anything crazy. That's because I don't think I've been capable of doing anything particularly crazy, because my mindset as someone who started running 4 years ago hasn't been developed enough to back myself, to take races on, and to like sort of believe and like almost have that feeling of like deserving to be at the front of a race. So I'd probably like attribute a really strong performance, coming second in a stacked field with people whose PBs in, all disciplines, like from 1500 to marathon, almost everyone in that race had a faster time in one of those than me. So like the guys at the front end there, the younger guys, they've got great 15 PBs, had great 3K PBs. I sort of was just like in the middle ground, but I knew like coming to like somewhere that I'm confident running, I know like every drain, every corner. So I just like knew in my head, and obviously like speaking to Andy as well, like we knew that if I was there at 3K, like it wasn't a question of like if I would take it on. It was like, when I would take it on. It was just like, let's just go take it on and like give someone who's, to put it black and white, a much better runner than me, give him a run for his money and like make him think, oh God, like there's a guy here pushing the pace and there's only probably 6 minutes of running left. So I'm going to need to respond. And yeah, I couldn't go with him on this occasion, but next time you go with him for another minute at the end, and then the next time another minute, and then all of a sudden you're going over the line in 14 minutes, which is like obviously the goal.
Yeah.
So I think like just all about, that mentality and like trusting the training, but not to a point where you become like obsessive over the training you've done, which is like, again, something I've been guilty of in the past. So I think like, yeah, trusting your training, just trusting your ability, like trusting your fitness, and just being like, look, I feel decent here. I'm just gonna do it. If it all goes to pot, then it doesn't really matter. It's just another race. But yeah, I'm pleased with how I raced it.
So a lot there. Takeaways really around belief, which we've chatted a lot about in the weeks leading up to most of your track races this summer. And the person you're talking about is Jack Kavanagh.
Yeah.
Kavanagh. Excuse me, Jack, if you're watching this, which I'm sure you might be watching at some stage once you see it on the channels. Superb runner. I believe he came fourth by a hairline in the Road Nationals just the week before against a fairly, GB National Road 5K. So we're talking a Battersea Park London 5K race with a high field, a high net worth, and the biggest thing was to put you out there at the front of the race, back yourself, and just kind of go, well, this is my training ground, this is my area, and back yourself. So a few things there around what you thought. It's just interesting listening to you, what maybe you thought was contributing factors, and it's there's some stuff around training, but there's a lot about belief there. And you're 24, for people watching this, is quite new to competing at the top end at that distance, and we haven't found your distance yet. So how do you feel the last 12 to 14 months? Then we started working together last summer. Of course, you weren't coached before that, which is remarkable in its own feat as well. That could be a whole nother video series. How do you feel, like in a nutshell, like the last 12 to 14 months? We've chatted loads about it. We chat a lot We communicate loads, which is great. I think that's key for any coach relationship. It's not about the magic session. How do you think they've gone?
I mean, like, yeah, like, obviously, on like a data point of view, like, yeah, it's gone probably as well as it could do. I'm not sure it probably could have gone better in terms of results, but there's obviously more to running than results, and you are like probably naive to think that there isn't. So, like, for context, like, before I met Andy, touch wood, I was like stupid. I was injury prone. I was doing all the wrong things that an athlete should do, under fueling, going on stupid long runs, doing these like so-called hero sessions, which just they don't exist. Which obviously you come to realize. I'd like come off the back of a self-coached sort of subpar London Marathon attempt, which like I wasn't happy with, and I think like it was a perfect time to come together and basically have someone else to hold accountable for my training too, because I ran an amazing half marathon in the build up to London, ran like 66, and won like a big half in the UK, the Brighton half, which was like madness. I couldn't believe I did that, like self-coached, and then I just sort of rest on my laurels and then thought, yeah, like running, I don't know, 220 I think at London would have been a breeze, and it wasn't, and I had a terrible day, probably the worst probably day I've had as an athlete, because it just all went wrong. But it was like the build up went wrong, the last 10 days went wrong, I was like hobbling around, I was on heavy painkillers, it just was all wrong. I needed someone to like strip it back and just go back to basics. And since working with Andy, I've like, you know, I've missed weeks of training here and there, but we've almost had like a solid block all the way through. Obviously, like taking time down when necessary, taking time down for like, you know, when my body needs to take time down, but not any sort of like prolonged period of absence. I've like sorted out my diet, I've sorted out my routine. I've also moved to London and started a new job. And yeah, just been like every time, like always showing up, because I also want to like do this for us, not just for me. Now there's somebody else involved. I think like we as a pair can like, yeah, we could go all the way to the top. You know, we just need to like trust in each other. So I think like to describe the last 12 to sort of 14 months, it would be like literally like perfect in terms of like what you would want from an athlete who has never been coached before to like, you know, now, you know, I've been with a coach for a year, which is probably, that's quite a long time to be with a coach, sort of in this day and age. You sort of see people like chopping and changing between coaches and stuff. So yeah, it's been mint. I've loved it. And obviously doing it remotely too has been another challenge. Like in an ideal world, I'd love to be like 20 minutes, half an hour from Andy, and we could like meet up and, you know, he could come on the bike, pace me in the car, whatever. But look, it's just hasn't been like that at the moment. Might be one day, but you know, just got to roll with the punches and sort of go with the hand we've been dealt, which is at the moment like paying dividends. It's, you know,
Yeah.
everything's just sort of working, and hope like Andy would say I've been a good athlete to coach.
Oh man, that's just so nice to hear that as well. I mean, I know we chat about this, and you tell me these things. It's not the first time I'm hearing, but it's really nice. I know we recording this, but it's what trumps there is like consistency is king. You've grasped that at like 24, or you were 23 5 minutes ago. You know, you were just fresh out of uni. You were 20 minutes away from me, and then we, of course, a really cool opportunity September-ish, October last year came up. We're going on a year now, pretty much London based, and there's a great environment there. We've chatted about how important environment is for you. You enjoy the running, you live for it, but your performance and showing up, you mentioned things like showing up, but you actually have a bit of outside life, of which I think is phenomenal. I think other runners listening to this could listen to really learn from, and I wish I, as an athlete back in the 20s into 30s, also took that on a little bit. I I drum that home. Becky, your lovely girlfriend, works out of the industry, which is great. Interested in your life and running, but of course there's more to it. Which leads me on to, what do you think tell me about the role your family has in your running enjoyment.
Yeah, so it's quite a weird one. So like my family is like running crazy, but wasn't running crazy until like 3 years ago. Like I don't think any of us as a four had ever been on a jog before like 4 years ago, and all of a sudden everything just spiraled and went crazy. Mum started jogging, doing park runs, then my uncle started going, and then my dad started going, and then I started going in an old pair of Air Maxes, and then all of a sudden you start like chipping away, and then you start like getting close to 20 minutes, and you're like, oh my god, I can run under 20 minutes for a 5k, and then you do it, and then you're like, well, what about 19, and then what about 18, and all these people who like have helped me along the way, like not just family, but like sort of like look back and think, oh my god, like 3 years ago I was like chasing someone around parkrun who, now I would sort of like, you wouldn't even like, in terms of like the level where we're at now is like, it's crazy, but that's just sort of like the nature of the sport, I think. And like, but sort of onto your question, yeah, like, I mean, like my best mate is like my dad, who's a fantastic runner, but again, sort of unconventionally, he's like a 49-year-old asthmatic bloke, who like used to drink and stuff like that. And like my mum, same sort of, same, she's obviously like 49 and, big drinkers back in the day, big smokers, but, we've just like all sort of turned this weird new leaf, and they know how much it means to me. They like can see like my passion for it, like literally live and breathe it. Gone all over the world, watching running, like just everything. It's just like literally everything to like our family. And like I think because it means so much to our family, obviously like in different ways, like mum just like loves going to parkrun and loves like the club nature of the sport. And mum is like what you'd probably call like a hobby jogger. And then like dad, like sort of pushing his age category now, like, which is cool. But seeing then someone actually like get success out of the sport is like probably really rewarding, and like really refreshing, because probably like a family who never thought like we would never ever be involved in like a sporting, anything sporting. So yeah, no, like they support me so much. They're the reason why I started running, so sort of owe it all to them, and sort of like paying them back now by running well. I guess that's what it's all about.
Oh yeah, that's what I kind of deep down really thought when I met you for the first time up in Harrogate at the bike shop, having a coffee. You were having some downtime in the spring, and then we started formally working in July last year. But yeah, it was a real thing around your family, and I think that's just awesome. We could spend loads of time just talking about that, and it just shows you they've clearly got a pretty good engine. Your dad, you underplay him there. He's he's running sub 17 these days, and for 5k, and he's running 240s a marathon. He just goes out and enjoys, does a classic, club running, but he's like, you don't run sub 245 just without a bit of an engine. So we've looked inside your engine. We've done a bit of lab testing. That might be for another series as well. There's so much to chat about, but that's important to you, and I found that out straight away. That's pretty much. And again, this, you mentioned early on 10 minutes ago about like, you're doing it, there's more people in the part, and it means a lot to you, and thanks. That's like, you're almost a coach's dream, because if the person shows up, like, I don't think you've not, and I know every session you've done in terms of like, we look at it, and I do that with all my amateurs as well, but you're on the elite scene. I take more emphasis on looking at the small detail, because the more I give back, the more we tweak, and it's small, like small margins with you. It's adjusting a pace by 5 seconds a kilometer, which could be huge for you. But you execute pretty much, I think, actually 100% of sessions. Now, there's times where we shorten stuff and drop, but it goes back to that consistency, and I think your dad's the same. Your ethos around that, and you guys just have a high work ethic. You get on with it. You Yorkshire folk, and that's awesome to see. So everyone likes to hear runners, triathletes, and I'm a triathlon coach and a running coach. But what's just without going into 18 hours of daytime TV, what's a typical day by day, hour by hour? What's a typical training week for you? Because people love to know.
People love it, don't they?
And actually, we hold you. You know, before you answer that, we hold you back. We take that age into consideration. We don't. You mentioned a bit like, wow, it's actually quite a long time a year. It's funny. It takes about 9 months a year just to learn the athlete, and then of course trust, and you know feel in the process. And if soon the athlete kind of goes, oh look, you're a nice guy or girl, I don't really necessarily feel like we could go anywhere, but it actually evolves even better. You look at your buddy Phil Sessman, who respect from the north, who went to the Olympics. He, you know, I think it's 10 years he's been building, and I believe he's been with the same coach. I must have read that somewhere. It might have been a 10-year journey, stand corrected, but yeah, it takes a few years. And yeah, you are London, I'm up in Leeds way, but we do actually connect up every sort of 6 to 8 weeks, which is nice. I'm down. So take me through a typical week, because we have a good structure that works, a routine.
Yeah. And we'll sort of preface and say, like, I'm not one of these like athletes who hides behind like a Strava wall and like doesn't post anything anywhere. Like we're super like open with our training, because I don't know why you wouldn't be. I don't know why anyone would hide what training they're doing. I think that's a bit weird. So yeah, you can see all our training on Strava and Instagram or whatever. But yeah, typical week really quickly would be, I work 40 hours a week too, in London in an office. But yeah, like an hour on a Monday. You know, then I train with a group called Cottage on a Tuesday. Managed to wangle my way into their elite sort of realms when I moved to London, which still sort of thank my lucky stars every day that the guy who runs that sort of allowed me in and saw a bit of potential in me, because I don't know where we'd be without that. But yeah, train with them on a Tuesday night in Battersea Park. And then Wednesdays we always gym, always jog, and we sometimes cycle. Thursdays depends, maybe a session, maybe a jog, maybe some strides. Just always respond to what the body does. And then again, Friday can sort of change. It can be the second session of the week. It could be a day off. It's all about being flexible. And then on Saturdays, we'll probably be back in the park with the Cottage boys doing some sort of session. I think like it's important to sort of put out there as well, like the fact I've got such a fantastic training group means that sometimes we as like a coach and athlete geo have to change what we'd maybe ideally want to do on a Tuesday. So I think a lot of the times I train solo on a Saturday, or do quite a bit of work at the weekend or the back end of the week, the second session or the third session by myself. Because the benefit of training with the group on Tuesday is it's unbeatable. Like the speed and how easy running with these boys are. You know, there's so many sub 14 guys, sub 20, sub 30 10k runners, sub 29 10k guys, you know, 345 1500 guys, sub 4 minute miles, 215 marathoners, 210 marathoners in this group. So it's like, it'd be stupid for us to be like, oh, we're not training with them. So I think like, yeah, typical week is just like always Cottage on a Tuesday and always a second session, sometimes a third. But yeah, and then a long run on Sunday, probably around Richmond Park. Some things that we always do there is like that we've learned to do together is I'd say like three things have like been fundamental in like, you know, sort of prolonging this and making me so much better is doing hills, because they pay the bills. Always run on hills. Not neglecting the gym, because that's so important, which I've definitely neglected in the past. And then just like eating like so much, fueling correctly. It's just like, yeah. So they're probably like, it doesn't really matter what training you do, because if you don't do the basics of strength work, eating correctly, hydration, then there's probably no point even bothering turning up to training. So I think like you can like look at people and be like, oh, you did this session, but it's like you need to look at yourself and be like, well, am I doing these things correctly? Because if you go and do a session that we might do, then you could just break. So yeah, I think like yeah, that's a typical week, but maybe more something that's more like typical of the last 12 months is like focusing on just those little things every week, just neglecting them and making sure that if work's busy, like, okay, let's prioritize going to the gym or something like that. You know, it's not all about running.
Yeah. No, you summed it up amazingly there, because you without me even cueing you, and just for the record, you've had no cues for this. This is just off the cuff chatting. You haven't even heard these questions in advance. Like literally, yeah, nailing the basics. The stuff I've learned from precision hydration. We did a test last year just around your hydration needs, and we tackled the fueling hydration for short races. Nothing super major, but when you're running, you average about 100 Ks a week. Again, some people might go, oh, wow, I'm going to run 100 Ks a week. I'm going to run 14 minutes. It doesn't always equate to that. You've got a really good high-end VO2 max. You have pretty good to high economy of motion, but it's improving, and we will re-lab test. We've only really done one lab test last October. We'll do another one now in October, ideally twice a year. But we do some field testing, and actually we just see the data and progression. So yeah, exactly that. Around fueling and hydration stuff, you couldn't have said it better, and there's no point actually turning up to training. So yeah, what you've said to people looking up to you is like, actually there is no magic recipe. It's the year in, year out that I keep banging on about, and also then just trusting that process. So then you're living and breathing it, but actually at the same time you're progressing to go from borderline 15 minutes to very low. You'd ran a 14:10 just on the track this summer, and then you just ran 14:12 on the road, which in the evening times, dark and so forth. But the main thing there was to push a position. So that was brilliant. So what do you feel is the next step, really, I suppose, towards as we enter the end of 24, because there's some things still lined up? It's been when I say a long season, we dabbled in February, you raced, but it was more of a throw your hat in that. Probably started in April, and then, so what do you feel the next in your words, and then of course,
I think like for me, like having a proper winter that's gonna prepare us for next summer is would be sort of how I would sum it up. My running journey so far has never been structured that way, so it's just been like, right, what's the next race, but like now, like where we're at, it's like mid-September. We'll do a few more races on the road, we'll take some time off, need to let the body sort of recover, let the mind recover, and then we'll go again. We'll get on the grass, we'll get on the hills, and we'll train for a big sort of effort over 10K on the road, hopefully in January.
Yeah.
And use the strength we build through November, December, January, February, on the mud, on the grass, in the rain, in the cold, to then go in April at the start of the track season, go, right, let's go after sub 14, and let's go after sub 350 for 1500, and let's go after sub 8 for 3K, because without that base, like that's not going to happen. And I think like we did it almost perfectly this year without really knowing we were doing it. So if we sort of tweak it a little bit next year or the end of this year, then it's going to work even better. Like last year we sort of like, we were training and we were doing a bit of racing. I was sort of getting to grips with London. It was all just like crazy, moving flats, all sorts. And then over winter, like, I got spanked over cross country, and I got spanked by the weather on road races and everything. But, we fundamentally lined up then in April and ran a 14:28 5,000 debut on the track. And then 6 weeks later, I'd broken 8:15 for 3K. So like,
Yeah.
if you apply the same process again, you know, we might open the season next year with a 14:25K, a 14:15 5K on the track, which then, you know, that 3,000 that we might run 6 weeks later might be, you know, all of a sudden like 8:05, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're unlocking a brand new like time that you didn't think was possible. So using the winter to get strong for the summer, and we'll have a proper track season next season, you know, getting some BMC races, probably go abroad, get over to France or Belgium or something like that, and like, let's just like, you know, not be scared. I think we played it pretty safe in terms of like, this year we did like loads of training and not as much racing on the track, whereas like next year, because I've now raced a few times on the track and trained so much on it, we won't need to do as much training on the track. It'll just be like 5,000, you know, one weekend, 3,000 the next weekend. Let's go. Oh, there's a fast 1,500 in Manchester. Let's go do that too. Like, it's just like, I think that's like that. Or how we structure next year. But we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Like, at the moment, we're training for a 10K in Leeds, and a 5K in Blackpool. So that is that's sort of the short term and medium term and long term.
Yeah, perfect. No, that's quite nice. That answers 2025, so we don't have to cover that really, and we don't really know. I don't like to get too far ahead. I've got the like 3-year, 5-year vision and stuff, and you're very much quite happy staying in the moment, which is great. I think that's where athletes should, you know, stay. You know, don't get too far ahead of yourself. And one of the things I forgot to mention, and just back to, I've said it a few times, like, you're a product of your environment, really, and I think you summed that up really well again off cue. And we've got Mark and the guys to thank from the Run the Cottage group. If you guys are listening, we knew it was a really sort of select, kind of really just good down to earth group of guys. They all run like, you know, sub 15 minutes, 5 kilometers. They run hard. They run hardly all year round, pretty much every Tuesday and then the weekend, and some of them extend up to marathon 10,000. So we slot in there because I believe you've got to have the fun, the environment. Obviously, with running, you need to be pushed a bit like the Kenyans do together. Look at them group training. You can speak to Kipchoge. I have been to Iten. They all walks of life. They all run. They meet to the group together, and I think that really. And I've learned that from other coaches. So we're really grateful to that, but you've been very consistent. So I'm totally open to collaboration with, as long as it fits the protocol for maybe our vision, and also, and you totally respect that, which is so cool. And then we adjust the week based on if it was more thresholdy, then I never neglect the speed, and you still have so much more top end to develop there, which is cool. So towards the end of the questions here now, how do you think your belief system, you answered a bit of this without even like being asked, because one of the things people won't realize is how your belief system was earlier this year relative to, because you're very humble and very much, just, you don't really know, you've just sort of run your heart out. You mentioned that in the beginning with your family and stuff. So how do you think that's evolving with now the evidence in 2024 of what you would, which in your own words was just, you use the word perfect. I'd more just say great success and you know, you're healthy, which is fundamentally what we said in the beginning. So how do you think, I mean, you don't have to know the answer necessarily, it's quite deep, but your belief system, which takes years. I mean, how do you think that's evolved?
Yeah, I think like you probably summed it up right. Like, I think there's like I think some of my best performances in running have come when there's been like no expectations. The perfect example of that is probably still maybe my best result to date in terms of like the way I executed it, and the way the time that was produced from that race was the Brighton half in 2023, when I was like, I'd run like 69:30 for a half marathon like 3 months before, and I'd sort of like started training for London Marathon and chosen Brighton because my sister lived there as a half. And I went out there and some guy just went off like a rocket at like 2K, and obviously just let him go because I was like, well, there's not a chance in hell that I'm going with that. And I just sort of sat in the pack, and all of a sudden I found myself hunting him down with like 3Ks to go, caught him, overtook him on the line, ran 66 minutes. And like, it was like, well, that was crazy. And then after that result, it was like all of a sudden there's like I felt like there was an expectation, not from like externally because I'm
Uh,
still relatively unknown in this sport,
yeah. Yeah.
um, but like well I'm still very unknown within the sport. But I think like friends, like university like friends, running people from the running club, people from Leeds, like just like club mates, people all of a sudden start thinking like shit, like Cal's getting good. And I felt like there was a massive almost pressure like that I was piling on myself to like run fast. Like you run a 66 half, then you should really be running a sub 220, and then running a 226 at London was like almost disastrous, if you like.
Yeah.
And then you start like looking at people who like beat you that day who haven't run as fast as you, and like I think like I've been so guilty for that. And I think like one thing I've definitely realized from moving to London is like everyone is on their own path in this sport, and you cannot compare like your times, your races, your training, your like your diet, your anything, your gym
Yeah.
program, like your the trainers you wear, anything, everything is like it's probably the most individual sport out there, in terms of like I don't do hardly any mileage compared to everyone at training. Yeah, I came second. I probably did the lowest mileage out of everyone in that race on Friday, and I came second. So
Yeah.
it's just like
Yeah.
it doesn't it really like really doesn't matter. Um, so I think like the comparison side of everything as, and I think like it's natural to compare because when you're naive in the sport and stuff, but like maturing in this sport is realizing that like you know what, like bad races happen, like good races happen, everyone has them, everyone is going to run well on one day, not well on the other day. So it's just like you should have to just be like, you know what, the body is pushing your body to the max every single week. It's gonna respond differently. So I think like not being like too over analytical and not just not putting pressure on yourself is really like conducive to running well and having success and like longevity in this sport, not
Yeah.
chasing results, and things like that. And I think like that's only just happened like in the last sort of like 3 4 months, I would say, like since
Yeah.
even like when I made my debut on the track at Combat 5000, like I still think like if we probably looked back through our texts and voice notes and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or if we could listen back to conversations, I was like, oh well, I'll have to go with the 14:10 pacer because like that like I must be in that shape because like all the other guys at training are in that shape and they'll go with him and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And like I only just ran 14:10 like 3 nights ago, like or only got near 14:10 like 3 nights ago. Like it's not, you sort of like have to remember that when you're getting to like the top end of the sport. And so I'm sort of rambling, but like when you're getting like to the top end, like you're literally talking about like 1 or 2 seconds a k, which is like it's so like marginal. So I think like basically to summarize, just like not putting pressure on yourself, just like chilling out, having a laugh. It's just like that's the only way that you're gonna ever run well, because you know you if you like record yourself and watch it back, and if you're rigid and stuff
Yeah.
when you run, then you run like shit. So I think
Yeah.
like it's just you just got to chill out and just like have a laugh.
Brilliant,
And
man. Well, you're
yeah,
you're a pretty chilled out kind of guy. So I think that stands you good stead. You summed it pretty well there to recover, and that term gets thrown around a lot. You've got to be an expert at chilling out. There's a few athletes that just know how to relax after training, and I've got a few mates that do that pretty well. I'm not very good at it, and triathletes aren't very good at it. That's because we're always trying to cram a few more sessions in. So if you can learn these things, because you talked about mileage there, you talked about others, you talked about comparing. It's human nature. You want to be accepted socially. We want to compare because you it's a human trait, I feel, and have learned from
Just
people explaining it,
talking
like
about
psychology.
talking about acceptance as well. Like,
Yeah.
just and one more thing about that mindset thing is like I thought that I would be accepted into like the training group, training environment, like sort of this elite setup if I went and ran like 14:10 for 5k, but
Yeah.
actually that's the complete wrong mindset. I got accepted because I turned up every week in the rain and the snow and the like -5 degrees and just
Yes.
turned up and like actually showed that I was like a pretty decent guy. That's how you get accepted. And like that,
Um,
yeah, that's not, it's not about like how fast you run. Obviously it is a bit, but it's not really. Like I could still be a 14:50 guy, but I'd probably still be as
yeah.
accepted as I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's yeah, mutual respect for everyone, and you're a great guy to be around. I mean, I certainly as a coach, you sort of dream about having someone that's pretty cool to chat to. You'd hang out with them. We've gone out in terms of socially as well. Like it's you've got to have that bit of rapport. Otherwise, we just if I asked you to run 10 by 1Ks, it's like you've got to be all in, and so that's awesome. I love that. That's cool. Rapid fire questions. You haven't heard these. Don't worry, they're not like all revealing. First one: are you ever going to do a triathlon one day?
If I could swim well, maybe.
I know a good coach.
Yeah.
So it's to swim. Yeah, you actually ride once a week and you work for Rafa. Those who don't know, he actually works for Rafa, a big cycle brand, clothing brand, apparel. But he rides with the guys. He's actually riding on Wednesday for a nice, well, I say 80 Ks. Geez, for a runner, that's like an Ironman.
It'll be
But
chill.
that's that'll be chill. Yeah, and the classic answer will be chill. You'll spin the legs, and actually, one thing is, guys, listening to it, and you can learn this from the Kenyans. They of course do 200 plus Ks a week, but you can only run so much.
Yeah, do heaps
And
of
I
cross
believe
training.
most coaches, yeah, follow this. And you could argue the fact that we should rest rather. Yes, we totally do get fitter when you rest. I'd rather we only started adding in a little bit of riding uh, recently through the summer. I mean, the summer helps. We'll see how winter goes. I think it's great for if it's not pushed hard. It's great for free aerobic work without loading the legs. You run 6 days a week anyway. You run every day. If you just respond well, I could give you 140 k's. You'd be fine. But we don't need to, and there's years to do volume. So I'm using it for active recovery. But you look at some of the top young triathletes. Gold medalist Alex Yee, he runs 13:40, 5K fresh. You've got Hayden Wild, the Kiwi, his nemesis. The two of them are battling it out for gold and silver. They're both 13:20 to 13:40 runners, and they ride about 500 k's a week. Of course, they're full time, and they've been doing it a little bit longer than you, or certainly since the youngsters.
Yeah, I think we could find success maybe in triathlon one day. I think I would probably respond well to
Yeah,
that.
boy.
I think like if you look at it, you sort of look at
Yeah,
like who's good at triathlon. They like you can sort of I feel like there's a few similarities there.
yeah, yeah. You've got a good engine, and you can run. Biking is super. There's a little bit of tiny bit of skill element, but you just have to spend time on the feet. Swimming, don't worry about. We'll get you in the pool. All right. Ideal meal out.
Um, where or what?
Probably both. Or
Nah, what?
yeah,
Let's do what? I think the
yeah. Let's see what. So I know
best
you quite like. Well, I know which ones. Yeah, yeah.
the best meal after after a hard session or something like that is just like a massive pizza and some chips.
Like you had on Saturday with your
Just
dad.
something like that. And yeah,
Yeah.
some ice cream.
Some nice and simple.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
Italian pizza. Brilliant. That's your ideal man. Now, do you want to represent GB one day?
yeah. Of course, it's like
Boom.
be like a dream, but there's a long way to
Perfect.
go. Just like let's
You're
yeah.
knocking on the door. You're knocking on the door. Favorite session?
Ooh,
Mm.
I quite like. Ooh, maybe like we did a session the other day. We did a session the other day, um, on the track is 5 by K hard, but we did a session the other day which was like 15 minute,
Yeah, yeah.
a 15 minute, basically continuous effort, like 3.5 minutes hard, 90 seconds
Yeah.
float, 3.5 minutes hard, 90 seconds float, 3.5 minutes hard, 90 seconds float. And we split a 45K in that. And I think that's probably the most fun I've had doing a session in quite a long time. I
Oh,
really,
that's
really enjoyed that
awesome.
on the road. So I think like
That's awesome to know. Yeah.
something with floats, I think I respond
Yeah,
well
it's
to.
awesome to know. I mean, I know you were buzzing off that session and uploaded, and of course, and you like bear in mind in training you would never try and we never leave it all out there.
No,
Occasionally
but
you
it is
might go
good.
absolutely on the floor, but yeah, it's a classic unders and overs. We haven't built that in yet. It's quite speed specific. No, that's quite nice to
Yeah,
know. So we're clearly highlighting quite a bit of your physiology there. You recover really well with you utilize your lactate pretty well.
yeah.
So there's some field days.
I'll throw a big fat like 10 mile progression in there too on the road. They're good.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
so it'll be your perfect. You love that actually. I think we did.
yeah.
You were up in Harrogate and you did a yeah. Was it you just ran like I think a 30-minute 10K or 30 like
Yeah,
low
it was
30 high
like
30s
yeah, it
in
was like
progression.
just every 5 minutes, just like went
Yeah,
up like
yeah, yeah,
5 seconds a K, and we were
yeah. You
finished at
love
like
that. Yeah,
250 a K. It was good.
yeah, 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 yeah. So
Yeah.
we don't do a lot of that because we just yeah we chipping away. Last rapid fire. Do you and really be honest here? Here it comes because I know people do uh, answer yes to this. Do you ever struggle to understand your South African coach?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh
Yeah.
man,
That's all.
yeah. Not only the accent, but even the way I sometimes write your sessions.
I
Sometimes I
started
would just
saying I've started saying how's it, which is
oh, have you
like
started saying how's it? Now,
yeah,
now we
I
talking.
need to stop saying
Stop.
that.
No, no, yeah, it's okay. People think I'm apparently saying yeah, yeah. Now, being the South Africans listening will laugh because that's not. I mean, in this country, it's quite posh when you go yeah, yeah. No, that's like pretty common. Yeah, 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 yeah.
How's
Means
it,
yes, yes,
bro?
no, no.
That's literally
How's it,
that.
how's it, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say that all the
Becky will
time.
be Becky
Yeah.
will be like, oh man, who, have you been talking to Andy
Yeah.
or you are you trying to be South African? No, mate, that's been awesome. Well, it's getting late now. At 20, you need to do your foam rolling and your meditation, and um, you're recovering from Friday's race. You've got we're aiming just for people if they've lasted this long. We're going to do a 10K. We haven't really pushed. Well, you ran one 10K this year for a bit of actually fun, which you won, but we just played around in that. We just respected it in Bristol, but we're going to run a fast one in Leeds and use our 5K. So that's the next thing coming up with a little secret thing popping up this weekend as well, but you can follow that on socials. But I love chatting and
Yeah, it was sweet.